Hello and welcome to Reawakening the Sacred Self, deepening our connection with our authentic soul, where we have gathered together Indigenous elders, wisdom keepers, spiritual teachers, healers, and inspirational speakers to share their wisdom and insights as to how we can integrate our spiritual practices more deeply into our everyday lives, thus deepening our connection with our authentic soul. My name is Frances Billinghurst. I'm your host for and the creatrix of this event, and I'm coming to you from Kaurna country in South Australia. As such, I acknowledge the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of this land upon which I reside. So Manina Padni, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Now, if you took part in last year's event, you may be very familiar with my next guest, because I am delighted to welcome back Jarane Nova. Welcome, Jarane. Thank you very much for returning to Reawakening the Sacred Self.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
More than welcome. Now, for anyone who is not familiar with her work, Jarane is a vocalist and a multi-instrumentalist. She is also a magnetic performing artist who creates music through the lens of her Indigenous ancestry. She has been creating musical performances in the festival scene for over 15 years. Through her deep connection and lifetime of Indigenous ceremony, she has embodied the ability to create profound ceremonial spaces. This ability, combined with her acclaimed vocals, has birthed a beautiful soundscape of unique high-frequency music that is woven with rich Indigenous textures and fused with inspiring lyrics, chants, and deep healing transmissions. So Jarane is going to talk to us about experiencing the new earth grid through our nervous system and pure love. So as I said, Jarane, I am excited to be talking with you once again. So thank you for coming back and saying yes to this event. But because not everybody here may have seen your performance and your interview last time, thought we might just start with you sharing a little bit about your background and in particular the inspirations that saw you create not only your unique music style, but also the deep healing transmissions that flow through it.
Wonderful. It's so lovely to be here again with you, Frances. Thank you so much for inviting me back. And I can feel those incredible Ghanis, would you say? Vibrations from where you sit. Yes, yes. So lovely. Well, I am from Tucson, Arizona, which is in the United States Southwest. I have Native American ancestry on both sides of my lineage. Like most Native people, I am an amalgam of many different tribes and races. I am a mixed blood, but my native side is primarily Apache and Inuit. I also have some Miami, which is a very old lineage from the Ohio Valley, and some Chumash, which is the California tribe, mixed with European, I believe, and who knows what else, because like many other Native people, I am adopted. And so it's always a challenge looking for and finding the authentic representation of my parentage. So that's where my genetics come from, and being raised in the Tucson Southwest back in the 1970s when the Sonoran Desert here was very pristine and beautiful. I was blessed with a horse by my parents. So from a very young age, I was sojourning solo into the desert for 8-10 hours a day, just riding in silence. And I think that's where I really started forming the understanding of how Mother Earth is my true mother, is my true place and my place of belonging. And I know many of us have tumultuous childhoods. I also had a tumultuous birth. So all of these these traumas have built up in me throughout my life, as it happens to many of us. And I've just realized recently that not only are these traumas informing who I am now, but they're responsible for how I relate to the earth. And that said, I've always known that the earth, being in nature, is my safe place, is my safe place. And this is where my music started to be born as a young child. I started being very aware of melody, and I was playing the piano, and I always sang from a very young age. I knew I was a vocalist. I was like, oh, this is the thing. This frequency of the voice was always magnetic to me. And I grew up singing a lot of Ella Fitzgerald and a lot of opera, and of course some popular music, but I was really attracted to the classics and the standard music. And as I came of age, I was studying opera. So I do have a very classical background in vocals. And I found myself landing in a psychedelic rock band, which was an incredible experience because I didn't really know about it because I was kind of sheltered, like on the horses with classical music, right? And then I was in this like incredible, super high energy psychedelic rock band where I found a different part of my voice. And that was lovely. And after leaving that band and moving to California, I started going to transformational festivals like Burning Man, right? So my first experience at Burning Man was so unbelievably transformative in that I was exposed to some of the finest electronic music being produced at that time. And that was a time in the late 90s where people were very much like anti-drum machine. They're like, no, it has to be authentic drums, no, versus electronic drums. And I really found myself so drawn to the trance of those drums, you know, what electronic or however they were being produced, you know. So that electronic sound I took back into my music and started making what I call tribal-tronic music, where I'm using natural voices and guitars and percussion instruments, and now native flutes. And I would fuse those with an electronic beat because I recognize the ability of the trance, right? To transform us and to transport us and to heal us. By being in the trance, you're able to access that source connection, that pure love that you are, that we all are, that purity of our souls. We can find it on our own because truthfully, no one else can give it to you, right? No one else can show you that part of yourself. You have to find it on your own. And being in the trance of music has, you know, throughout human history been a way that we access that very deep cosmic part of ourselves. So that's kind of how all that came along musically. And as far as the part of the healing transmissions, well, that's just something I think that it's not like I set out going, yes, I'm going to create healing transmissions, right? It was more like I found myself in native ceremony, and being in the Inipi, the sweat lodge, is one of my favorite ceremonies to be in. And I've been in hundreds, if not thousands, of these ceremonies. And when you're in that beautiful, dark place, that womb of Mother Earth, receiving the medicine from the stone people, from those rocks that we bring in and put that water on them so they can breathe on us and heal us, and singing traditional songs in that setting, that's where all of this came from. That's where the next level of this medicine started to seep into myself. And that's really the old way, because in our modern time and what we would call a fast food TikTok culture, you know, everyone is downloading this information, right? All the time. I'm just eating information. I want to know something, I eat it, but we don't really know it, right? We don't really experience it. And in the old way, it took time, you know, and it's true. The best things do take time because you're actually learning how to embody these experiences. And so after so many decades of sitting in ceremony and all kinds of indigenous native ceremony, I find that it's a place that lives within me that I can access to create these spaces. And that is my intent, you know, because even though I love making music and I love singing, what is the purpose of that? And I've always had the purpose of making the prayer for the benefit of all life. So it's my wish and my hope and my desire that the music I create, it's not only recorded, but in a live music situation, if I can pick up the frequency, right, with this music, with myself, with my voice, and open up a space for people to enter into to receive their connection, right, then that's the ultimate. Right. So yeah, so that's, I think, a little bit about my backstory and where I've come to be sitting where I am today.
Well, that's wonderful. And thank you for being so authentic and talking about your background. And it's something that I think a lot of us can relate to, even on different levels, that we, as you said, in our fast food world, there's this image of, I call it a very sort of veneer, superficial, instantaneous consumption. And we have almost forgotten that we need to sit and integrate all the downloads. We need to, if we're wanting to deal with our own trauma on various levels, it doesn't matter how deep, how horrific, or even if it's just a lighter version, so something that has just said, from listening to your story, we may not have gone through something similar to yours, but we've all got trauma on some level. We need to sit with that. We need to be authentic with that. And as you mentioned, Mother Earth is often, or is, our mother. That's why we call her Mother Earth. And she is such a deep healer. And we need to allow ourselves to just be. And so thank you for reminding us that we need to just be, to go into that dark womb of Mother Earth again, to be reborn back into our authentic self, be connected back into that. Now, your talk is on the New Earth Grid. So this is something that's probably an area that I'm not familiar with. So are you able to sort of tell us a little bit more about what you mean by the New Earth Grid, and also how you came about it? Again, is this something through an extension through your childhood experiences on your horse, your deep connection with Mother Earth, or is this something recently that you have come across due to your connections?
It's a combination of both, I would have to say. Back in 2020, I discovered this amazing teacher. Her name is Jacqueline Hobbs, and she has a group called Oracle Girl, they call her, and the Purification Space. And so I have been listening to her and am continually stunned with how prolific she is in her teachings. And she is one of the people who is talking about this New Earth Grid. And I personally need to feel something before it opens to me. And this really resonates with me, because I had been feeling in all the time I spend in nature, which is quite a lot, I've been feeling this shift happening in the earth. And I was already cognizant of that, of how things were changing. And I think being in California too, during this time, in the Los Angeles area, not in LA itself, but, you know, California has about 40 million people, right? This is a dense place, right? So I was feeling all of this happening, and especially through the pandemic, this was happening, and I was noticing the earth shifting. And I ended up moving back to Tucson, Arizona, where I'm from, and really sitting up in the Sonoran Mountains and experiencing myself relating to the earth in a new way. And I think the words, the New Earth Grid, maybe encapsulate this in the best way, because it has shifted, right? There was what was happening before, which I believe was really more in alignment with this negative control that we've been all living under on this planet for such a long time. And I believe that is coming to a head. And as that is shifting, the hijacking of our earth itself is allowing Mother Earth to shift into her next iteration of her authentic self, right? And so we are, those of us who are cognizant of this, are holding that space and allowing ourselves to align with this shift that's happening in the earth. So does that kind of describe what that is? I mean, you know, because there are all of these points. We have these ley lines, and we have our pole shifting, which I notice, having been on this planet for such a long time, you know, noting the cardinal directions and noting how these actually shifted in my perception, where I'd be like, oh, wait a minute, I thought that was direct south, and now that is, you know. So there are these subtle changes that I've been noting over the last few decades. And so that really tracked for me, this new earth grid. So I find myself sitting in nature and allowing myself, like you were saying, to just really unwind, right? And then as I'm doing this unwinding, I'm noticing how I connect to all the beings around me. I notice how I'm connecting to these trees, and I'm noticing how I'm connecting to the rocks and to the elements and to the energetics that are around me. And here in the Sonoran, of course, the biggest beings are those saguaros, those dynamic saguaros with the arms. These are huge cacti, huge beings, and they're so dynamic and blessed. They're the giant trees of the desert. And I'm doing all this work, and simultaneously I'm living my life with a 13-year-old daughter and taking care of my aging mother. And I'm realizing I started listening to some work on somatic healing. And I've been aware of somatic healing and what it means, you know, and I do lots of yoga, and I've been walking on this healing path for such a long time. And I realized, wait a minute, I think I'm missing the quintessential part of my healing, because I really haven't addressed my nervous system and my traumas from being born and my childhood and all of this. And so I started to realize I've been building my life on quicksand, because I never went back and really got that foundational grounding. And when I started to learn some of these practices and creating more space intentionally, right? There's a difference. I mean, in my life, I'm pretty cosmic, and I will have these visions, cosmic experiences happen all the time. So I'm like, I'm good, you know, I'm connected. But I don't think I was really embodying to the depth that I can embody. And I've been really practicing landing, feeling my body, understanding how the wind is interacting with my skin, with and how where my breath is, where my body's touching, how I'm feeling. And I'm practicing this mindfulness throughout my day. And I'm finding myself getting more present, to the extent that when I sit in nature, I now feel how my nervous system is in relationship with the trees around me. And I'm feeling more viscerally this connection between me and where I am in the coordinates of this earth. Yeah. And as that happens, I'm starting to hit these experiences that I've only had after doing like really intense native ceremonies. These experiences where you are fading away, and because your perception of yourself, of your human self, or your identity is a better way to say it, is beginning to soften to the point where you realize that I am not in nature, I am nature, right? I am this. And then my nervous system allows me to just start blending in such a beautiful way with where I'm sitting, and I'm starting to experience this deep peace and pure love that I have always known is who I am, that I know that we all are, but we forget, right? So I think that's basically it, right? Where we land in our bodies and we sit in nature, and we allow nature's medicine to help us transform and remember that we are nature.
Oh yeah, definitely. And this is something that seems to be a theme, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do another version of Reawakening the Sacred Self is this connection back into nature. We live in this world of separation, yet, and we see ourselves so separate from nature, yet we are nature. We are an integral part of the great cosmic web, that once we sort of get past our ego, how we've been sort of programmed, or basically programmed, of thinking that we're at the top of the pyramid, that we are all part of this cosmic web, then hopefully, I live in hope, we start treating not only other people, other beings, other inhabitants, but also our earth in more of a deeper, more nurturing, more just a better way as well.
Yeah.
And as you said, this comes back to also looking at our nervous system. And I read or heard someone talk a few months ago about how, especially from the Western culture, our nervous system is living very highly on a very stress level. And we see that as normal. So we don't realize how much this high stress, from all this deep trauma going way back centuries and centuries, has impacted upon our nervous system. So we all need to get out and just sit with nature. And as you said, it's almost like a surrendering of the ego, just being and observing what's around us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And if you're a person who's been able to meet a Native person, Indigenous person who actually grew up in nature on a reservation or a reserve, many times, if they're not acting from their places of trauma, because we all know there's incredible trauma in generationally for every human on this planet, but if they're free of that, some of the people you meet, especially the elders and oftentimes younger people and children, there is a serenity and a quietness that they possess that can make a Westerner feel very uncomfortable, very ill at ease, because their tempo is so chill, right? There's no need to express everything all at once. We got to get this done, right? There's no need for that, So I think it's beautiful to think of that, because there's this juxtaposition, and to think about how their nervous system is relating to the world from that peaceful, serene place, juxtaposed with our modern, gotta go get it done, caffeinated system, right? And I'm guilty of that. I hit the caffeine to get through the day. I got a 13-year-old kid, I'm like, oh, but I try to be mindful, and I try to land back on my body. And it's important to get the message out there that there is a different way of being. We don't have to be like this. And when we're so revved up and going so quickly and just in survival mode, or what they call functional freeze, which I have definitely experienced, right? When we're doing that, we can't really comprehend what negative controllers, for lack of a better way of saying, we can't really comprehend what they're doing. And we still tend to believe them. And I think this nervous system conversation is the point of contact where we have this cognitive dissonance happening. And we have people who just are like, business as usual happening, because they're revved up so high, and there's such functional freeze through their whole lives that they can't actually let in another way of being. Because humans have the potential, and I think have been in the past, have the potential to be so completely different than we are being right now. We are related to the trees, right? We are related to the standing ones, and they can teach us how to be. That's why we want to hug them, right? They're like, oh, I can feel there's something happening in this being that is so gentle and strong and beautiful and loving and kind. And I just want to align with that. Right? Just like I align with my mother when I'm a baby, I'm with my mother, and we have an entropy together, right? Yeah, it's just like that with the trees. And so I think this is a beautiful message in the Reawakening. And I'm so grateful for you for doing this series, because people need to reawaken. Yeah. Yeah. So
Definitely. And as you said, especially from the Western perspective too, we've been taught that if we step away from this control, it's a sign of weakness. And I definitely see it in the shifting culture here in Australia myself. There is, there's almost a fear of being vulnerable. And I don't know if that's right across the Western world. And it's almost seen as a weakness, but it's, to me, being able to show your vulnerability, being able to say, hey, my past isn't the best, or I've done something wrong and I've hurt people, and I'm now in a place where I can take responsibility and admit that, or I can hold space and listen to someone share their experiences of what my actions have impacted upon them. That's actually a sense of great inner strength. And the word humility is coming to my mind.
yeah.
And I think we need to, especially the Western culture, there's this avoidance. I think deep down it's fear as to, we know we have, through colonialization, we're still seeing it today, that we have caused great pain to other people. There's also a fear of, will it be retributed back? Because that's what we live in a culture, that's what we expect, but we don't understand, or we are, I'm hijacking this, I do apologize, but it's just like, we need to feel into that sense of our own vulnerability and basically hold space for other people.
Yeah.
And I think this is the new grid that you're talking about, the new earth, is this realization that we don't have to have this perception of strength as being dominant, as the strength is holding space as well, and allowing, admitting our faults and our failings as well.
Yes, absolutely. You know, in Native art, in a lot of Native art, at least in North America that I'm aware of, there's intentionally, the artist will leave a flaw in the pot, you know, in the weaving, because that flaw is exactly what you're speaking to. And not only is it a point of humility, a point of vulnerability, but it's also the crack with which the light can come into this world. You know, so there is something very important about what you're saying here, because that is the crux of humanity, right? That's what's going to separate us from the AI, is we have this ability to be vulnerable and have humility. And I think Brene Brown, of course, did all that stuff on vulnerability. I mean, fantastic work. And it's true, people are still afraid. And I think you're right, that has something to do with a deep fear of being seen, a deep fear of seeing that ugliness in themselves, in ourselves, you know, because we're all part of this, right? To one extent or another. You know, I've used plastic, I admit it, you know, and it's like, so we all are a part of this, and it's hard to look at that, but we're still so locked into these ideas of our identity, and giving away our control specifically, you know. But all this softening will allow us to expand, to fill up the space in a way more beautiful way that cares for all life. And like you, I'm full of hope. I believe we are on our way to a more beautiful world, but we have to hold that space for all of that to unfold for everyone.
It's almost like we need to sort of step into that darkness. We need to acknowledge and take ownership of the past. Doesn't mean that we need to repeat it, or it just means it's like, once we sort of say yes, it's almost, I don't know, I'm not a Catholic, but this is what I can sort of gather, that if people go to confession and confess their sins, and they do it in an authentic, heart-sent manner, then you feel relieved. Then everybody goes, okay, we've cleared the air, where can we move on from there? At the moment, while we're dancing around that white elephant in the room, it's just not going to be done as well. And by that, I'm also thinking of not only externally, but also our own selves, because I'm of, and I have mentioned this before, that if we look at the world and where the world's going at the moment, we can feel very overwhelmed. So sometimes it's best to come back to the individual and say, well, I can't, as one person, fix the world on my own. But if I look at myself, look at my trauma, look at my actions, come back to nature, come back to my relationships with nature and everybody around me, then hopefully that is a flow-on effect to someone else might see that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people to remember as well, you know, Mother Nature is in charge. Mother Nature's in charge, you know, so all of these powers that be can say what they will. But when it comes down to it, if you're aligning yourself with the principles of nature, you're walking in a good way, you know, so just know that if you're confused, and you're like, oh, well, maybe I just need to put on my VR. No, no, align yourself with nature, and that will help you make these choices in your life, because you're modeling yourself after our greatest teacher, right? And the creator expresses through all of this. We're all integrated together. So yeah, so Mother Nature is in charge. So we should probably pay attention. Yeah, pay attention to what's happening with her, align with her, with this force, and then we will be making the right decisions for ourselves and our families to help us move forward in this world in a good way. Because even though we're going through these ideas of retribution and self-recrimination and sin, you know, which is technically to miss the mark, right? Sin. Even though we're going through all of this, if we do that with the old mindset of the colonialistic mindset of remaining in control, and I'm going to find a definitive linear outlet and understanding, well, no, because you're approaching the same problem, the new problem with the old mindset. So we have to soften ourselves into this. And like you said, allow ourselves to be vulnerable when these feelings come up, and maybe surrender, like, I don't have the answers, but I do know how to be present in my moment and learn to adhere to nature, and then trust and walk forward. I mean, and if we all do that together, what a beautiful moment in time. If we all just take that one step together into a more authentic way of being in concert with nature, we will shift everything for ourselves and for our children, who are the ones who are going to make the concrete changes. Yeah.
And one thing that I've noticed in the last few years, there's an interest, well, it always has been there, sort of getting more into, especially in the Western world, getting more into plant medicine. And I'm not knocking it. I think it's very valuable, but it should be used as a way not to sort of like, and you mentioned this right at the beginning, to instantly achieve enlightenment or whatever, but it should be something to sort of open the doorways slowly, and then we can resonate and sit and integrate the experiences before we move on to the next stage. And that thought sort of came to mind right at the beginning when you were talking about when you were doing your trance music, in that, to me, trance is like the beat of Mother Earth. And it's a very natural, even if you might be using synthesizers like that, but it's still a very natural thing that anybody could get into. Coming back to the heartbeat of the earth, plant medicine can take us to another realm, but we still need to come back and integrate that experiences in connection with the earth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you know, we definitely see especially Westerners applying the same mentality to these ancient medicines. And I've used many of these medicines, and they've helped me in many ways. But fortunately, I didn't wind up my identity with them or becoming the practitioner of them, because they're helpers. Because ultimately, we are it. You know, we are humans. We have everything on board. Our biology is exquisite, and we're already awake, for lack of a better word to say it. We already are these multidimensional beings. We've just forgotten. And so these plant medicines are helpers. They're helpers to help us along, but we don't need them. And sometimes, like you said, they help us open a gate. Like, oh, okay, I didn't know how to get through there. Now I'm good. But to use them, to abuse them, is a whole other level. Yeah. So I think that's a really great conversation, especially for people who are just entering into that. And I think there's a generation maybe from like, I don't know, like 25 to 50, right in there, that generation where they're really like going full bore, right? In that, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it can really talk about nervous system. It could really blow your nervous system out. And in these times when you're taking this medicine, you are actually connecting with all of the medicine and all of the people who are doing this, because you're in that frequency, right? Thinking in terms of frequency. So you have to be very careful who you sit with. You have to be very careful who you sit with. And there's a lot of people who are offering these ceremonies who probably don't know as much as they think they do. It can be dangerous.
Yeah, and it sort of comes back to what you're saying at the beginning with it being a fast food, popular sort of society, and it shouldn't be used as sort of a badge of, something to tick off your box. But yes, it should be something held in reverence, and it sort of brings me back to what we were talking earlier about being one with nature, because there's a Aboriginal practice here, and hopefully I'm not going to pronounce it incorrectly, because I think it's pronounced Dundari, and it actually means deep listening. And this is when the Indigenous peoples here go on their walkabouts, or they sit with nature, and they don't just sit in nature to be out in nature, but they begin to listen. They listen to the trees, and you're talking about connecting in with the huge cacti in your area. And then they listen to the birds, they listen to the wind, and then they begin to listen to the earth, and then really start to listen to themselves. So this really deep listening. And to me, it's sort of like a blending back into.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I just did that this morning. Yeah, absolutely. That's where it's at, is because you have to sit sometimes for a little bit before the chatter kind of like stops and the agendas. And then when you really are allowing yourself, for me, auditorily, it's really big. There's something inside the silence that is so intoxicating when you allow yourself to just be in it. And I crave it myself. I crave it, to go into and feel that that immersion in the silent realms. And there's so much happening inside there. And that's when you get like the profound messages. And those are the moments where I've heard nature speaking to me, these types of things happening in that depth. And not that I'm pursuing that, but just sitting in the richness of that silence. And I think many people have no idea what that even means, right? So it's, what did you say, Denari?
I think it's pronounced Dundari. I'm going to have to do a little bit more. It actually comes from, I think it's the Daly River area, so that's in the Northern Territory of Australia. Okay. And yes, it's this practice of deep listening. And that's something that I grew up in the country, so it's something that's always been of an interest to me as well.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I wanted to, before we end this conversation, I wanted to sort of circle back to what you are doing now with your music. Do you have any albums out? Are you in the studio? Do you have any courses happening? Where can people find you? Where people can support or reach out to you? What is happening in your world that way?
Thank you for asking me that. I'm always working, playing gigs, new music coming. I have a website, which is easy to get to. It's geranenova.com. And on that page, you can see some of the work I've done, including some of the clips from that TV show Outlander, beautiful show, some of the vocal work I did on there. And then below that is a link to a lot of my music, some of my what I call native ambient music, where I'm doing vocals with flutes, and also to my more singer-songwriter type of thing, which has a variety of music on it. That will link you to SoundCloud, and that's the only place I have my music up right now, because I do want to produce it to the next level before I start putting it on all the platforms. So that said, there is one album in particular. I have some more tracks that I need to take care of before I release it. And if anyone is so inclined to support me in my work, there is a donation button on my page, where you can go through PayPal. And I haven't officially launched a Patreon yet. However, I am in the works of launching a membership group via Facebook, where I will have weekly meetings, wisdom teachings, and live music and conversation with people. So I'm in the works of getting that launched to create a community I would like to call a new tribe nation, where we can all kind of get together and do that. Other than my website, you can find a lot of the work I've produced on YouTube. So I do have a YouTube channel, Gerane Nova, and I have all kinds of music on there going back decades. So there's a lot of stuff there for you to experience. And yeah.
Fantastic. And of course, all the links will be below this recording. But you did mention Outlander. So I think we didn't touch on this last time we spoke. I know it was a very popular series on Netflix. And so how was it working on the series? And also, what was your contribution there?
What a wonderful show. You know, I didn't know about it when I got hired to work on it. I did 3 different tracks. So I was hired as a vocalist, working with Bear McCreary, who's a genius. So I was just brought into the studio and did native vocals for 3 of the tracks. One was Mohawk based, the other one was Cherokee based. So there was some of that language in there. And then the last one was my favorite one from, I think it was the 5th season. I think it was season 5, where it was more just a pure voice with some lovers. It was just beautiful. So yeah, so just those times I did that, and it was a wonderful experience. I mean, Bear McCreary and his team are so amazing. And after I did the first track for I think it was season 4, because it's when they get to the US, right? After I did that first one, I was like, I should check this series out. And I started watching it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing piece of work. Yeah, so yeah, it was great.
What wonderful. And I do like the idea that you're in the process of bringing your music, your wisdom, your gift out into the world. So for anybody who's listening, this is a fantastic way to get behind Gerane and go back to watch Outlander, or go to her YouTube channel, go to her website below, and help support this. You are an amazing vocalist, Gerane.
Thank you. And I should just mention too, if you do go to my website, please sign up on my mailing list, because that way I will be able to communicate with you as I launch more projects. Yeah.
Fantastic. And looking forward to seeing how you, especially with this interest that you're sort of be birthing in relation to the new Earth grid. And this is something that I feel is getting more and more, well, the need is becoming more and more in this day and age, as we're going through all these changes and revelations, coming back full circle really to our connection with our mother, which is Mother Earth, and our authentic soul.
Yes. Beautiful.
So, once again, Gerane, it has been absolutely wonderful and very inspiring having you here. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Frances. It's always lovely to see you and experience you, and to have these deeper conversations that are just so lovely to have the back and forth of digging deeper and the reflection, because it's with each other that we keep reflecting and reminding each other about what's happening and things, little pieces we forget, because it's a busy world, and having one another, having community to do it in is quintessential and so beautiful. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you here. And to everybody who's watching, Natalia, I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Blessings.
Thank you, Frances.